let me go ahead and get things started. A couple administrative things before we introduce Jeremy. A reminder on the 7th, we've got the book talk and rare films at Wexner. Dave Phillippi's, and I'll include it in this week's note again. When you get there, just let people know a verbal affirmation that you're a SABR member gets you in at the member price for $7. We've got some Ohio State baseball games queued up. It's in the newsletter there, the 29th and then May 4th and 17th. Our book club is the 21st of May. I think I set it up at Hilliard. I'll have my iPad with me, so we'll do Zoom as well. But for those that want to start meeting in person again, I have it. I think it's at the Hilliard Library. And then, and just out of curiosity, I wondered whether anybody was going to the Malloy conference, the Negro Leagues conference down in Birmingham this year. It's a chance to see Rickwood Field for anybody that's interested, a historic ballpark. And then the big SABR conventions, the 17th of August through the 21st in Baltimore. So lots of stuff queuing up. I'll also establish a date for a Clippers game. Usually we do that July or August. So that's it. Now we have our esteemed guest, Jeremy Beer. I know we a number of times, Jeremy, we got to the point that where people were saying, yeah, I was going to ask him this. So now's our chance. We still ended up having an hour discussion because it wasn't our first book that we've talked about. So anyways, Jeremy, just to get started, I'm curious why Oscar Charleston? I mean, what made you interested? I could guess because you're from the Indy area. So go ahead.
Well, let me start out first of all with a hearty apology for missing this in February. I wish I had a good excuse, like a medical emergency or, I won the lottery or something at the last second, but no excuse at all. Just one of those things that I blew through. So I apologize very much. Thanks for giving me a chance to redeem myself here. It's great to be with you all. And if my mind is coming to, it's more coffee I pour into myself, the more alive I'm feeling here this morning in Phoenix, Arizona. Why Oscar Charleston? You're right, Indiana connection. So I'm not from the Indy area. I'm from northern Indiana, rural northern Indiana, sort of between South Bend and Fort Wayne, if that means anything. It probably does to y'all, not that far away. But yes, just was a baseball fan like you. Was finally a couple of years after it came out reading the Bill James New Historical Baseball Abstract, and was going through the top 100. It was shocked to learn that the fourth greatest player of all time was somebody I'd never heard of. Who the hell is Oscar Charleston? And when I started digging in on the internet, finding out that he was from Indiana, really troubled me because, my friends and I were sports nerds and, sort of people who'd sit around making all time, best starting fives in basketball for guys from Indiana, who's the best football players ever from Indiana. Baseball, we knew we weren't as rich, the state, as we were in basketball, but, we thought we knew some of the greatest players of all time. Oscar Charleston's name was completely unknown to me. So that seemed wrong. And I did a lot of, just digging around for fun. And it was clear that he just hadn't really been taken seriously as a historical figure. What was online about him was contradictory or pretty clearly like quasi-mythological. Nobody clearly had their goods on Oscar Charleston. And so eventually decided to be fun to write his biography. And it brought me to where we are here today.
Okay. I think one of the things that interests me the most about him as a person was it felt like he was very concerned at times with a dignified public persona. And I felt like he wanted to marry a respectable gal, and yet every time there was a brawl, he was not only was he usually in it, he was often like the instigator or the first guy to lose his cool. And that seemed like a really complex character that you had there.
Yeah, I agree. I think you put it very well. I think he's a complex character. When I started writing the book, really the only thing out there about his personality was that he was a brawler. He was a fighter. What's his name? Rabowski, his biography, his History of the Negro Leagues, which Larry Lester always liked to say was should have been in the fiction section of the bookstore. Talks about Charleston being a violent man with a snarling temper, and so that was the portrait that was sort of out there in the secondary literature. That's wrong. He was not just a habitually violent man. He liked to fight. There's a difference. He had a temper, and he liked boxing. He was a huge boxing fan. His scrapbook is full of clippings from the boxing world. He once participated in a benefit for a boxer who was destitute that apparently he had really liked earlier in his life. So he liked to fight, and he had a quick temper, but he was a violent man, like off the field. There's no record of violence off the field at all. There's no record of getting in trouble with the law off the field. There's one time he got thrown in jail in Cuba for a fight that happened on the field, but when he went in spiked high at third base. But yeah, so you have to have it is true that he had a temper, and then he liked to fight. So if a fight started, he was definitely in, and sometimes he was the one to start the fights. Whether he started way more than was the average is a little bit open for debate for me. But yes, that's on the one side. You think that's what defines his personality, but it's not at all. In fact, he was this really charismatic, apparently a profoundly charismatic man. So in the Philippines, when he's there as a teenager, he somehow is able to befriend Walter Howard Loving, the head of the Constabulary Band, and one of the great Black music leaders of his day. Ended up actually working for the intelligence services for the U.S. during the war, World War One. He had this ability to attract people higher up in the social scale, as you say, and he presented himself in a dignified way. And so he married up, like you said. Both of his wives were from these highly refined women from families that were very, very respectable and climbing the social ladder. And he befriended a journalist, Margaret Martin, in Cuba. He and his wife, who wrote for W.E.B. Du Bois's magazine, and her husband was a very successful businessman. I mean, it's interesting. You don't necessarily see this with all Negro Leagues players. They have these friends in high places, and are striving, really striving, especially for someone with an 8th grade education like Oscar. So yeah, it's a complex personality. I don't know that I really got down to the bottom of it, but he was very intelligent. He was charismatic. He could present himself very, very well, and really liked to be. He was striving to climb socially. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a positive way, and that's more of what really defines his personality, I think, than the temper that he had.
It impressed me in the book that you were able to get to that level of kind of the social aspect of the character, because it's hard to research, particularly somebody whose prime was in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I mean, we didn't have the media, but I mean, it was hard enough to find baseball stuff about it, yet alone personal stuff.
Yeah, but it spoke to Charleston's personality that personal stuff was talked about. I mean, thank God everything's been digitized. I couldn't have done this biography. Maybe somebody could have, but going around from archive to archive, newspaper, microfilm to microfilm would have been impossible. Almost everything has been digitized now. Some newspapers haven't been, but the vast majority of what I needed. And it spoke to the force of his personality, that it gets talked about in the columns. One columnist for the Pittsburgh Courier talks about it being he was like Will Rogers. He conquered everybody he met with his personality. It was a Bill Nunn, I think, said he was someone that the gods have smiled upon. There are these really like quite over the top descriptions of his personality. So to me, that speaks to the kind of charisma that he must have had. And yes, it would have been hard to find that if you couldn't do a global search of Oscar Charleston and just take your time and go through everything, which is basically what I did.
Anybody have any questions? Or I still have a few myself, but I don't want to.
Did Indianapolis ever try to, maintain his historical information? I mean, like his house or anything about him? Because I know if he's the wrong color, he's way back, and they probably have demolished everything where he grew up.
Yeah.
But did they do anything to try and restore, some of the fact that they have a favorite son here that may have gotten forgotten?
The short answer to that, Michael, is no. The longer answer is not that much longer. You're right. Every house, at least that I could find, every address I could find associated with this family in the city directory, which they were in almost every year from the time that the family got there in like 1900. Every one of those houses has been demolished. Now, I did find where the address of where he would have been born, and it's basically just like some industrial area. The street had been closed off. There was a tractor trailer sitting on it. It's kind of weedy street. So you can find that if you know where to look and have the address. It's an old address system, so you have to use the one that's not being used now. So it's not easy. But yeah, everything's been knocked down, and there's been no effort. I mean, I was hoping the book. I did have several people from Indianapolis contact me after the book came out, wanting to do something. One person was a state representative who was hoping to do something in the legislature. Other people active in Indianapolis sort of affairs, but nothing has happened. I contacted Indianapolis Indians myself, like, hey, would you like to have it's a 100th anniversary of the Negro National League. Now, COVID, of course, threw a wrench in everything. And this is I thought, what a great PR opportunity for the Indians, do something about Charleston, claim him, put him, and no.
Chairman, that's not exactly true. Honestly, Charleston's grave has been marked.
Well, I was going to say that I wrote the epitaph for the new gravestone. So worked with Bob Kendrick and the Negro Leagues to do that. They were going to have a ceremony. Of course, COVID threw that. Didn't happen either. So Oscar never gets any luck when it comes to getting publicity. There is an Oscar Charleston Park, I should say. So there is something named after him. It's on the east side, not particularly near anything that he had anything to do with. And there is a little plaque there about him. But in the near west side, where IUPUI is, where he really grew up, there isn't anything that I know of. Like there is an Oscar Robertson street named after him in front of Attucks High School. There's nothing for Charleston. So there's a lot more that could be done, should be done, and just haven't succeeded in getting people's attention. So yeah, Michael, it's the why he was forgotten is an interesting story. It basically comes down to being the wrong color, of course, although again, Oscar Robertson has been remembered, that's not the entire story. It does come down to not having kids. A lot of it, there was no one to tend his flame, tend his memory, to champion him that you could go to for the quote, the kid, the grandson. I couldn't find any relatives. He comes from a family of 10 living children. I built ancestry.com out for his whole family tree. I searched high and low. I couldn't find anybody who was blood related. Now, since the book came out, I have found at least one person, which is great to make connection with, and they were super happy about the book. But yeah, it's sad. Indianapolis he can still do something about it if somebody wants to step up.
Well, and also, Busch Stadium is still standing. It's
Yep.
part of it.
Yeah, Jerry Strecker lives there, actually, I believe, who's a
Yes.
Charleston researcher.
Yes, and they actually preserve the interior of the ballpark. So I'm from Indiana also, so I've been there. So it's really neat. It not to contradict you, Jeremy, but it's really nice that Indianapolis has preserved a lot of its baseball history, and it's really neat. I think it's just because we don't have the media availability of the of stuff like that. I think that's the reason he's been. I think that's the reason he's been forgotten. Not because Indianapolis doesn't care, but just because it wasn't. It just wasn't recorded and put down.
Well, it was recorded and put down. Just do one more thing. It was. It's in all the black newspapers, and they're still all there. And in fact, the Indianapolis Star itself covered the Negro Leagues well, reasonably well. So it's there. It's all there. That's why I can't stand people talk about. We still don't have statistics. It's impossible to know anything about Oscar Charleston. That's total crap. We have lots of statistics. We have 6,890 plate appearances in the CBAS database from Charleston. That's a career. I have a mountain of clippings. I'll share them with anybody anytime. We know plenty.
Well, yeah, but nobody goes looking for them.
Yeah, well, I know.
And that's the sad part, I guess, is what I was saying. Not that they're not there, but for the common people, they're not there. And it would be nice to. It'd be nice for. That'd be nice for that kind of thing, but if there are no descendants, there's no reason to put him in a public light or something. I don't know. I do know that the Indians have a Negro Leagues night coming up this season, just like they have several parts of the country have a night like that. Maybe there's something they could do for him then. I don't know.
Jeremy, I just want to underline the one thing, and then I got Tony raising his hand, but I couldn't agree more on your comment. You need a relative to kind of carry the flag. I look at Sean Gibson kind of doing that for Josh.
Amazing.
And boy, I know a lot about Josh Gibson, and a lot of it is because I've been in some different meetings and things that he was able to do. So I agree. Tony, it looks like you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, Jeremy. I enjoyed reading your book, learned a lot that I didn't know. I think part of Oscar's problem was he played so early.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't familiar with as many of his opponents as I was if I read about Josh Gibson, for example.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I think he stands in for he's not the only guy who's been forgotten. That's what I say on all these, talks I'm on. He stands for everybody who pre that integration generation or just before integration generation. All those guys have been forgotten. Nobody thinks about John Henry Lloyd. He may have been one of the greatest shortstops ever to play the game. Nobody talks about Turkey Stearns. Nobody talks about Martin Dihigo. Nobody talks about Cristobal Toriente. You can go on and on. So I agree, Tony. That entire generation of Negro Leagues players, or really two generations of Negro Leagues players, has basically been forgotten, so to speak. So totally agree. Blake, if you don't mind, I'll just answer the question in the chat quickly while I have the floor from David. Pitching. Yeah, so he came up as a pitcher. That's what he was signed to do by C.I. Taylor for the Indianapolis ABCs in 1915. He had done a lot of pitching in the Philippines as a lefty, of course. when he was there with the 24th Infantry team. So he was going to be a pitcher. It just turned out he was too good a hitter not to have, and too good a fielder not to have out there every day doing that. So after his first year, really by the end of his first year, he was more of a positional player than a pitcher. And he really is never like part of the rotation again. So yeah, it is mostly after that, mostly mop up and fill in stuff. Exactly. Hope that answers your question.
Tagging along with Tony's question about he played too early. Would you attribute that as one of the reasons why he was not one of the first groups of guys that
Yeah, my understanding, he got in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. You know, Monty Irvin was on the committee. I forget who else was on the committee. It was Judy Johnson on that committee. And Judy Johnson played with Oscar, but he did not like Oscar. The one guy I found who did not like Oscar Charleston, who's on record, was Judy Johnson. I think there might have been one other member of those Grays or Crawford's teams. It was I can't remember who. So I think there was one other member who was on record didn't like him. Judy Johnson didn't like him. He was a little too intense, I think, for Judy. Who knows what the real issue was there? But those are really the only example. Everybody else had really good things to say about him, including the living people I was still able to speak with. So I may have been, it was partly he was too early. It may have been the committee member or two. He wasn't their favorite guy. But yeah. And then I think they also wanted to get in guys who were still alive early on, which that makes sense. You know, if you're going to start doing this, you have the first people who come up and take the podium. So, but it definitely doesn't reflect and shouldn't reflect a kind of ranking of his status among Negro Leagues players.
Others? I'm not.
Blake, I have a question.
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, Jeremy, I was fascinated by this conversation about recognition, and I was just wondering, from your seat and your lens on life, with Major League Baseball recognizing finally the Negro Leagues and the attention that was given nationally to this topic for a while, has that resulted in any pivot, or was it just a spike and then went right back to where things were before?
That's a really good question. I mean, it was a spike. There definitely was, I think, more written about the Negro Leagues after that happened than happened around the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues, which was like the sort of the big moment to talk about the Negro Leagues. And again, COVID kind of helped ruin that a little bit. So yeah, whether it will result in a more lasting recognition of Negro Leagues players and their accomplishments is an open question. I don't know. I'll give you a little data point. I was looking just this morning before I got on because I hadn't really looked at the list closely. ESPN just came out with what they thought, they purport to be a really thoughtful, well-researched list of the top 100 MLB players of all time. Has anybody seen that? They did a lot of publicity around it. One of the writers contacted me, did a really nice piece about Oscar, actually, as part of the series they did on it. But
and I think it's going on TV on starting Monday night.
Oh, okay.
I think they're doing 80 through 100 on Monday, and I think they're going to march through the week.
There you go. Well, it's all online right now, and you can look at their ranking. And so, to your point, Joe, I don't think it's really sunk in yet, though. So there's no player from the Negro Leagues who had his career in the Negro Leagues who's in the top 25. That to me is absurd. 50 years, the greatest black athletes in America, and none of them were one of the top 25 players in baseball history. They have Gibson in the 30s, I think. He's their highest. Satchel Paige, 41, and Charleston, 53. And it's interesting. These are guys who are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to take everything into account. This is post Major League Baseball calling the Negro Leagues, major leagues. This is post a lot of things. Seam heads. Now we have stats. We have research. So I don't think it's still yet really sunk in because those rankings are way too low. There's no way Josh Gibson is in the 30s. Josh Gibson is one of the top 5 or 10 players of all time. I think Oscar is right there with him. I think those, and Paige. I mean, so I don't know what's going on here.
Or what's not going on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, these are ESPN, they're they have every incentive to not to be fair. You think so? I just don't think it's really sunk in yet with people how good the top of the Negro Leagues rosters were. That you can look at how they performed against Major League pitching, et cetera. Again, we have stats to back this up, and it's it hasn't sunk in yet. So
Okay,
we'll
thank
see.
you.
Answer your question.
No, I'm not surprised, but saddened by your response. Thank you.
I see Jim raising his hand.
Yeah, Jim, you're muted, Jim.
Hey, there we go. Really enjoyed the book, learned a lot from it. We had in Columbus, we had the three Negro League teams in 1921, right year after it started. We had John Henry Pop Lloyd was our player manager. So I want to ask if you had any other stories about him that didn't make the book. And also, the next time we had a team was the Columbus Bluebirds in 1933, and I've always been fascinated with the name Ted Double Duty Radcliffe. That would pitch one end of a doubleheader and catch the other, and he was on our team. So I just asked you if you had any other stories or information about either one of them that.
Great
they were
question.
playing right here.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to give you a good answer. I wish I could, Jim. I don't know. For Pop Lloyd, I can't. Oscar didn't seem to have any memorable run-ins with him, so I don't think I got led to anything other than him being. I'll just say this: if there's one thing as you went through the literature, the old newspaper literature, and the favorite game of columnists was picking their all-time teams or talking about who was the greatest, whatever. Lloyd was the one guy I think who most consistently came up with Charleston as the greatest Negro Leagues player of all time. Also highly respected, as you know, he went on to be a manager for a very long time.
Right.
But they didn't have any run-ins. They don't seem to have been friends. I don't think they ever played. I don't think they were ever on the same team. I know they were never on the same primary team, but I can't even remember a barnstorming team they were ever on together. So I wish I had more to tell you about Lloyd. And then Double Duty Radcliffe, same thing, came along later. He was one of the people who we do have who gives us oral history about Charleston. He's who testifies to Charleston's greatness. Of course, he's kind of catching Charleston at the later end of his career. But I don't. Again, I think they were too far apart generationally to have been close. So
Did you run into any, doing your research, any Columbus sources that would be particularly good for research?
I don't remember having any. No, I don't remember having any Columbus newspapers come up as part of my archival research. Yeah.
We have a newspaper, the Call and Post, similar to the one you mentioned. I was wondering if you'd ever gotten into that.
Maybe I did have a couple. Maybe I do have a couple clippings from it. I don't remember going through a whole run or anything like that. It might be a couple clippings.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I feel like I didn't
really enjoyed the book, and of course, now when we look at Columbus baseball, these names that were in the book that didn't mean anything to me before, Dizzy Dismukes and Candy Taylor and all that, they all were here at various times.
Oh, that's great.
I would have just read right over those names before, and after reading your book, and then that's that guy. So that was very helpful to start put things together.
Thank you.
So good.
That's great.
Good
we
book,
really should have there's room for a new full biographical encyclopedia of Negro Leagues players. You could pull from SABR Bio Project stuff, I feel like, and do a little bit of new work and put something together. I think that'd be a great book someone should do.
Yeah. No, I remember when I was a boy, the Indianapolis Clowns would come to Columbus every once in a while and play a game, and I didn't really know what that was. I was only 8 or 10 or 11 years old or something, but I'd see ads in the sports page that the Indianapolis Clowns were coming, so that'd be in the 50, 52, 3, 4 around in there.
Okay.
So,
Bill Hayward, Heward, has a great book about the later years of the Clowns called Summer Called Clowns. I think he played on that team. It's a great book if you're interested in that. It's really they're no longer a Negro Leagues team at that point. They're just a barn-forming team.
But it would
be really good book of these fringes of baseball history.
By the way, I misspoke about the TV show that starts Monday. That was MLB.com. And those are the 100 players right now.
Yeah.
But that it was MLB Network, not ESPN. So don't go looking at ESPN for that.
Well, David put the link in the chat, so there you
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Looking for
Jeremy,
anybody
what's
else.
next? I have a question. Jeremy, what's next for you?
Thank you. Well, I'm nearly finished with a book that's nothing to do with baseball. Unfortunately for this audience, it's a biography of an 18th century Franciscan priest who was an explorer, like a one-man Lewis and Clark of the American Southwest. So his name is Francisco Garces, and hopefully we'll finish that totally this summer, and that will be published probably in 2024 by the University of Oklahoma Press. So,
Jeremy, was he a right-hander or a left-hander?
Al, funny you asked. He was a right-hander, but he got paralysis from malaria on the frontier. So I think he had terrible handwriting. I know that because God, trying to read the diaries he left behind is insanely difficult. Probably wouldn't have been much of a pitcher. It was certainly sturdy.
Rick.
Jeremy, really enjoyed the book. We met out at 9, and so I had an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about it out there. Good to see you again. You were talking about how you had accumulated so much in the way of clippings and information. I was just wondering, do you think there's any more out there? Or do you think you finally have taken care of that?
There is more out there, and especially I'll say this in Cuban newspapers, because I wasn't able to do much in Cuban newspapers. I did have one that I went to do but they weren't digitized because they're not American newspapers. So the NEH didn't give grants to digitize Cuban newspapers. So I spent a week in the ASU library going through one of the Manila papers and then just thinking how slow this all was. So I know there's more out there in Cuban newspapers in particular. And there's also more that I didn't get from at least one of the Indianapolis Black newspapers that I only went through a little bit of the microfilm, but didn't have time to go through all of it. So I know those for sure. And I'm sure that I missed other things as well. I think I probably got the vast majority of it. But yeah, there's more out there, especially in Cuba. There's probably more of a story to be told. He seems like he was a bit of a folk legend in Cuba. Like, is it Echeverria? Is that his name? I may have that wrong, but there's a Yale professor who grew up in Cuba who wrote a memoir of sort of Cuban baseball. He speaks of Charleston in that way, that his grandfather or father, would talk about him in reverent tones. So I'd be curious to go through like Cuban sources and find out whether he really was embedded in Cuban like folk memory more than he got embedded into obviously American folk memory. But I don't know the real answer to that question without having gone to the sources.
Yeah, it's a lot has been done, but I have a feeling that we'll get a lot more down the line. Not so much maybe with Oscar, since you wrote a pretty thorough biography, but some of these other players. One of the things that we really liked here that we talked about quite a bit at our earlier session on your book was the Jesse Owens connection, because he's of course an Ohio State legend. And you did a great job with that. And I don't think a lot of us knew very much about that at all. I certainly didn't.
I don't think anybody did, right? If anybody did, that's another area where I wish I knew more. And I'm not sure if there's more in the way of sources to get to, but are there Jesse Owens descendants maybe that could be spoken to? I mean, Owens unfortunately kind of cuts out all of that from he has 2 autobiographies. And one of them speaks only in completely denigrating terms about his brief association with the Negro Leagues, doesn't talk about his ownership of a team, any of that stuff. And the other omits it entirely. And then who was it? Schaap. I think, is it Jeremy Schaap who did a biography of Jesse Owens? I think I have.
Yes.
Doesn't talk about it at all. Maybe except very briefly. So yeah, I would really like to know more about that connection. I mean, because
Yeah.
I was fascinated to think about those two, bumping around on a bus through the Midwest, Jesse doing his thing before games, Oscar managing this team, not a prime team. He's past his prime. Like, what was Jesse Owens has not been able to capitalize on Berlin and the fame that, but boy, what a fascinating, tableau. Two of the greatest
Yeah.
athletes in American history. Two of the most, really, two strong guys, but kind of on the fringes there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That was a great part of the book. We appreciate that you brought that to light.
I hope I more or less got it right, but there'll be way more to do on that if somebody's interested.
John?
Yeah, Jeremy, that was an excellent book, and I really enjoyed the part where you talked about Branch Rickey's relationship with Oscar Charleston. And do you feel that he really respected Oscar Charleston's opinions, or was he just using him as a vehicle to get players in the Negro Leagues to sign for Brooklyn?
That's a great question, John. And again, I wish I knew. It's another one of those things that seems to be, if not unsourced or unsourceable. We have very little to go on from a firsthand perspective. We have Clyde Sukeforth quote to the Sporting News in 1953, so fairly contemporaneous, saying that we use Oscar. Oscar did a lot of background information for us. That he got us in where we couldn't go, and I'm forgetting the exact quote, but it implies that Oscar did real work. That he wasn't just a vehicle for getting access to guys. And then we have also Campanella's autobiography, in which he calls, or his ghostwriter, I should say, calls Oscar Charleston Oscar Robertson. One more piece of bad luck for Oscar Charleston that he doesn't even get his name. The name isn't even right. It's like, the Big O did not do scouting on Campanella. So he doesn't show up in the index. Anyway, it's crazy. Where Campanella says that Oscar had compiled a thick dossier on him for Rickey. Again, is this the ghostwriter kind of making stuff up, or did Campanella really say that? Is this real information? It's kind of hard to say. I suspect it might have been real. One interesting thing in the Branch Rickey papers in the Library of Congress, I spent a day there flipping through them, seeing if there's anything in letters that Rickey wrote or anything about Oscar. I couldn't find anything, but there's a program mysteriously in Indianapolis. Gosh, now I'm forgetting. It's a clown from the Clowns from the year that Charleston 54, I guess. Indianapolis Clowns program just stuck in there randomly. I'm like, is Rickey kind of keeping track of Charleston's career, or was he just interested in the players that may have been on the Clowns? I don't know. So there's these little teasy connections, and then, as I say in the book, I think they had some commonalities. You would think, right? Maybe that they did, but obviously they're both Midwestern boys. They were both teetotalers. They were both Republicans. I found a clipping. Charleston was active in the Republican Party in Pennsylvania when he was there in Harrisburg. I bet they had some things they could talk about, even beyond baseball. And could connect on. One thing they wouldn't have connected on was religion. Rickey being a devout Christian, and Charleston allegedly, according to some of his being dragged to Sunday school by his second wife and not much liking it, and being a bit of a scoffer afterwards. So, I don't know. That's a long way. I'm just giving some information to answer your question, how much Rickey respected Charleston's opinion. But I think Rickey probably respected his opinion. I think he'd seen him play in the 1920s when Charleston would barnstorm against St. Louis Cardinals teams, and Rickey was the GM. So I think he'd long been aware of his career, and would have been aware of how Charleston was talked about by others. He would have known that he, crushed Cardinals pitching in those games. I think he probably would have respected his opinion.
One question about Branch Rickey is put forward as somebody, because of his piousness, that he felt that it was unfair to suppress African Americans. But do you feel that it could be that he just was on the pulse beat of society and knew that he could tap into a source of talent that he wouldn't have to pay for as he would with white players.
Yeah, I think it's both and, right? I don't think these are not mutually exclusive. I think Ricky, and if Lee Lowenfish, whose biography is fantastic of Ricky. If Lee were here, I think he'd say the same thing. I think he genuinely believed that integration was the right thing to do. I think that comported with everything he believed as his understanding of America, his as a Methodist. I think it genuinely comported with what Ricky believed is right. I also think that making money / saving money was never far from Ricky's mind. And that's part of why he did the whole United States League thing that led to the Charleston scouting relationship. So that he could, fill those empty dates in at Ebbets Field, baby. Let's make some money here. And we all know about how he didn't exactly extend himself on contracts for guys. That's why he filled the minor league system with guys he could bring up cheaply. So that's all true about Ricky too. But I don't think that should make us think that it was just some cynical move on his part to sign black players. I really don't think that. I think that would be that'd be unfair to Ricky. And we just don't have any history of him like in private, saying terrible things about these guys or something like that, or treating them badly as human beings. It seems to comport with what he really believed.
Thank you.
Great questions.
Anyone else? Well, needless to say, we all enjoyed the book, Jeremy. We really appreciate you coming back a second time.
I'm sorry to make you all talk about it, not just for an hour, but for an hour and 45 minutes. I apologize.
That's okay. I mean, I think it was a book that captured our imagination. We did as a chapter, we had one of our book clubs. We said, read any book about the Negro Leagues that you want. As part of our 100th anniversary celebration, and given the fact we were all Zoom at that point, it really worked out well. But I think it has been really fun for us to dive into the Negro Leagues over the last couple of years.
With the book behind you, what was it like to go to the Nine Conference and meet people like Rick? Jeremy?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, it was. Well, I love going to the Nine Conference. I wasn't able to go this year, and it was great to go to the Malloy Conference and meet people. You can't write a book like this without the work of the people who go to these conferences. Who've done all this painstaking research over the years. Gathering the statistics. So that was really good.
Did that give you a whole new sense of notoriety within that circle? Oh, you're the guy that wrote the Charleston book?
Well, yeah, it does. It's nice. Oh yeah, it was really nice. It was great to people are very kind. People are very appreciative, just like you all. And it's gratifying. So thank you very much.
If you're ever in the Indy area, let me know. I live in the other Columbus, Indiana. So
great.
I will pick them up and we could hang out.
I will do that, Ryan.
I just had a quick personal question back to northern Indiana. Mm-hmm. Were you from anywhere near Logansport?
Yeah, not far away. So I'm from a little town called Milford, which is between Warsaw and Goshen. So on State Road 15. So I would go past Logansport a lot on my way down to Indianapolis, or more or less, very near Logansport. Home of Kennesaw Mountain Landis, right, David?
Oh.
Yeah.
Is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Kennesaw Mountain Landis grew up in Logansport.
Oh, that's shameful. I didn't know that.
I don't think he was born there. He spent his formative years.
Okay. Yeah. I thought he was born in Ohio, wasn't he?
Yeah,
that's right.
He was born in Ohio.
Yep. But he grew up in Logansport.
Okay.
There's one biography.
I feel a little better, but not totally.
Yeah. You should claim.
I just have cousins in Logansport. That's the reason I asked.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's a culturally rich area. Cole Porter grew up in Peru, right there next to Logansport. Theodore Dreiser grew up near most of his teen years, and anyway, in the Warsaw area. So unrecognized cultural riches there in northern Indiana.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Great. Well, thank you all for your time.
All right. Well, you're certainly welcome to stay on the call. We're going to talk a little bit about the collective bargaining agreement, and I know one guy really wants to talk about Carlos Correa. So
all right. Well, I'll let you guys do it. I'll get another cup of coffee for myself. So
all right. I really appreciate this. This is what we were hoping for. I mean, it's always so insightful to hear from the authors in these things, and I really appreciate you.
I do want to know if he has any reactions to the lockout and stuff like that.
Not that's worth you guys hearing, other than if there's something that MLB can do to damage the future of the game, they can be counted on to do it. That's basically my,
Understand.
Yeah.
Take care, y'all. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Jeremy. Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Great guy.
Yeah. That was fun.
It was really worth the effort getting them back. That's for sure.
Thank you,
Yeah, thanks for following up on that.
Yeah, and like I said, he felt really miserable. I think I could have said, we'd like you to be on Christmas Day, and he'd say, I'm there. I felt like he felt that bad about things. Well, one of the other things we wanted to talk about today, first of all, Dave Philippi, anything else you want to mention? He's put a couple posts in there if you want to see what the films are about. We've got a week from Thursday is the event at the Wexner. I know a lot of the people on this call, we've been down at the Rare Films a number of times before. So anything you'd like to say, Dave?
Thanks. Not really. I mean, if you've been to one of the programs before, it'll be a shorter version of that. It's all from the late teens, early 20s. There's some additional 1919 World Series footage that has not been seen yet. But yeah, it's kind of that time period. So
I do as an endorsement of the Rare Films, and I think Rick was part of this as well. When they uncovered, I think it was from Alaska, the game footage from the 1919 World Series, where one of the White Sox, it might even have been Seacott, double pumping on, getting a double play started. It became just like this revelation at the SABR conference. Particularly the 1919 committee, they just had that play on like continuous loop. And see, look at him double cut. It was like evidence, more visual evidence. So anyways,
all of the films that we'll be showing in April are from that find. It's the exact. Yeah, we were actually the first place to show that footage you're talking about. Yeah, and it's this filmmaker, Bill Morrison, is the person that found among hours and hours and hours of newsreels, he pulled out the baseball stuff for me, basically. And so this comes from exactly that same find.
Okay, good. It was eye-opening. It was awesome. It was really awesome.
Along with that, I challenge any of you that watch it when you go to the Wexner Center to decide whether or not Seacott was doing that on purpose or not, or whether the shortstop Risper was slowing down to allow that play. We had 25 or 30 people talking for an hour in there, and we had 25 different viewpoints on what happened. I don't think we came to any agreement whatsoever at the end of that. So that would be a lot of fun to talk a little about that at one of our hot stoves later on after everybody's seen it.
All right. Well, anyways, Thursday the 7th, Dave, we're looking forward to it. All right, on to the collective bargaining agreement. What's the? I mean, the good news is we got baseball back. You know, the bad news is there's a lot of things that happened that. Well, I mean, we're watching the Reds kind of gut their team, and so it's hard to say that you know, we're going to have a more competitive playing field out there. But anyways, who wants to start? The 5-year agreement. I'll fill in on some of the things. They increase minimum salaries. The luxury tax is going to move up by 20,000 or 20 million each year over that 5-year agreement. The base moves up, the minimum threshold moves up by 3 million each year. And then lots of rule changes and
international draft possibly. I don't know that still. So
yeah. I think for the most disappointing thing for me, at least as a Pirate fan, was I was really hoping that they would have a minimum salary floor, that the teams had to spend a certain amount of money to be competitive. I mean, I think it's one of the things that keeps like certain teams in the NHL from ever just like being a lousy team for 10, 15 years in a row. I mean, the fact that you have to have a certain minimum amount of players or money, if they had that, I feel like the Pirates wouldn't have to worry about losing, you know, Brian Reynolds next, because they'd rather have a team payroll under 50 million. So that was my biggest disappointment. I mean, there were a number of disappointments, including, you know, that it's only a 5-year agreement, which means we're probably going to go through this shenanigans in just 5 years, which seemed really soon. Go ahead, somebody.
Well, for as much as this was painful, they did so little. It's a huge disappointment. They probably could have reached this kind of agreement months ago. It's just like, I can't figure out either side on this. They're just obstinate about, you know, not bending at all. You know, one side doesn't give the other one any at all. And it's just, you know, it's just frustrating as a fan. It's just really disappointing on both sides.
Well, we do have the draft lottery. That's one big thing that came with this. I think there was a lot of meaningful progress made, unlike the 1994 strike. I think there's a lot of things moving forward to be excited about.
Besides the draft lottery, what are the other things that you liked?
Well, I mean, the fact that there are small markets get additional picks, get additional picks to draft players to keep themselves competitive, and the fact that fact that you got a team like Minnesota in on Korea is actually a positive thing for the game, because nobody saw that coming. You know, and the fact that the fact that Tampa Bay was in on Freddie Freeman. Who saw that one coming? I mean, teams are a lot more competitively balanced than they were 25 years ago.
Steve? Oh, I thought your hand was up.
I tell you, my Reds, I'm looking at 110 losses this year. I mean, as soon as the strike was over, they gutted the team. And they're doing exactly what the strike was supposed to, or the lockout was supposed to avoid. And they're throwing in the towel, and they're going to try and do this by bringing up rookies and play with 2-year players and 3-year players. And, they got some talent that, I think Louisville's finished last in that division for the last decade. So, there's not much down there. And so I don't know. This is just really, to me, was frustrating about how it didn't work out. And
I think it's more the Reds ownership, Michael. I think it's more the Reds ownership saying we don't really care about spending money. They never have been about spending money, and they need new ownership there that will spend money, because they never had that.
Well, it's like Blake was saying. Somebody's got to force their hand a little bit, or else they're just not going to. You're going to find other teams pulling the same stunt.
I think, or one thing about the agreement that jumped out to me is they're not even trying to hide the fact that they are setting things up for potential owners who want to buy a franchise at the time of a low price, and that it's going to multiply in value over the course of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And I think before they would have never been so kind of open about that. They would say that every owner is trying to build a competitive team, and it's a community resource and stuff. And now there's not even any pretense about that anymore. It's set up for people, like to buy the Pirates, to buy the Reds, whoever, at a low price, and then hold on to it as an investment for a period of time. And they're not hiding that anymore.
For those of you who follow things more carefully than I do, what would be the best estimate of how many teams are actually trying to win?
I'd probably say about 15. I mean, I think half of them are trying to win, and maybe as many as 18 to 20. But year in, year out, I feel like there's about 15 teams that are going to compete all the time.
But what do you do with the Dodgers? I mean, they have limitless money. They have more talent than some divisions. If you put an all-star team together in one division, they couldn't compete with them. And I mean, it's not just the poor teams. The rich teams didn't get any restrictions on them either. And I think we're just going to see a very tiered type of cast here of players. I mean, you're going to get 5 good teams. They're going to have 10 that competitive, and the rest are just, playing out 162 games just to put some people in the seats. And like I said, you can tell I'm just frustrated with this whole thing right now.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people got on the Cubs for dumping players, but that's not what they're doing. I mean, they've been a little active team within their division. They went out inside the future MVP this year. It's going to be that Suzuki guy from Japan. He's really going to be good, and people are going to talk about the Cubs as a surprise winner in the National League Central.
I did read that the agreement overall is probably going to cost owners about $3 million this year. When you look at the increased amount of money they're going to have to spend because of the minimum salary going up, the allocation pool for pre-arbitration players. It will be about $3 million a person. I will say, I really, one of the things I liked about the agreement was the fact that they set up that pool of money for pre-arbitration players where, and I haven't seen the specifics yet, but the concept I like, which is if you've got a rookie player, a second, third year player, if they win a major award, they get a bonus of a couple $1 million. I think that's really good. And I know that Corbin Burns in Milwaukee was kind of the poster child for making that happen, which, you know, he was a guy that was making, I think, $620 last year. And if the agreement had already been in place, he'd get that 600,000, but he'd get a bonus of 2 million or 2.5 million because he won the Cy Young Award.
And he'd also get a year of service time. That's important to the players also.
Right. And they put in some incentives that say, you know, if your player wins Rookie of the Year and he was on your opening day roster, that you also get, I think, additional picks. I'm unclear about the actual how they're implementing that, but I know that was another thing that created somewhat of an incentive for people to not play that game where you don't bring the guy up until, I don't know what game it is you're allowed to bring him up, but at some point to avoid a full service year. I mean, I've seen the Pirates do it 20 times. I mean, I know when McCutcheon finally came up, it was like, finally.
And the Cubs did it with Chris Bryant, and that was a big thing because they said they wanted him to work on his defense.
The other stat that came out was that the group of young players, they believe that the average salary will go up by 22%, which
like $1 million, I think.
Yeah, so that was I suppose encouraging, but anyways.
To me, the one bright spot wasn't with the agreement, but was in the courts where they ruled for the minor league ball players that they had to increase their salaries because for travel time and for a bunch of other stuff, and actually treat them like more than just slaves, because they're, you know, it's almost going to double their salaries in some cases. And I think that's been long overdue, but you know, that to me, that was the only positive I got from the off season as far as something for the players.
I'm really surprised on the rule changes that are slowly coming out from this agreement. That's really surprising to me regarding the shift. What was the other one that they came up with?
Pitch clock.
Pitch clock, yeah.
They're going to put sponsors on uniforms. The home run derby is going to dictate in case there's a tie. But
I like that idea.
I think the two big ones were the pitch clock, and they both were kicked 2023 before they actually implement them, and the defensive shifting, which, I mean, I'm very, very opposed to the defensive shifting. It feels like a pitcher's coach or coach's pitch kind of rule. It's like, well, then learn to hit the other way.
Wider bases too.
Yep, bigger bases.
Wider bases, which I thought was okay.
And the ghost runner too at second, they're going to implement that again. I'm not real fond of that one, not at all.
Is that
just for this year, though, right?
That's just for this year.
Yeah,
that's just for this year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't part of the CBA. That's part of this year's health and safety protocols because of COVID and stuff like that.
And the lateness of spring training too, I think.
Yeah, I think that had a lot to do with the pitching arms.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to have some difficulties certainly early on with that.
But they raised roster limits, and you know, starting pitchers normally don't go more than 5 innings anymore anyway. So
it really has been interesting to see pitchers go 4 or 5 innings right out of the gate in spring training. So I think you'll see pitchers by and large push longer in games earlier in the season to save the bullpen.
I like that idea.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Pitchers go 4 or 5 innings out right out of the gate in spring training. So I think you'll see pitchers by and large push longer in games earlier in the season to save the bullpen. 'Cause
Stan, I missed the shift rule. What does it look like?
I think they want to have, what, 2 players on both sides of second, and they must be on the infield,
Ah,
I believe.
I didn't see the specifics on that, Stan, but you're probably right. I felt like that was one of those things where it's like, well, let's just get people playing again and we'll finalize the rule this year. But yeah.
And we've got the
Really
universal DH too. That starts this year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's some rule change about if you pull the DH, the pitcher fills this. It sounded like the same rule, but they said it's different. Where the pitcher fills
Ohtani
the
rule.
spot,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
If
sort
they
of
take
weird.
out the pitcher, if like Otani is a DH and pitching, he can still remain DH, even though he's
Yeah,
no
that's it.
longer in the game as the pitcher.
That's right.
That's not
Thanks,
helpful.
thanks, Jeremy.
You're
And,
welcome.
and it is. They're calling it the Otani rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm from St. Louis. I'm one of the directors of the Bob Bragg chapter here in St. Louis. I just happened to catch the email, and I love the Oscar Charleston book. And of course, he was fantastic for one season they were called the St. Louis Giants back then, but they became the St. Louis Stars soon after. And I actually was just at the mall yesterday with my son, and I noticed that one of the stores in the mall is selling a lot of the Negro League attire. So St. Louis Stars hats and stuff like that, Homestead Grays and all that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Was it a lids?
I think it is. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that they got some marketing rights to that this year and have a line of stuff out there.
Does your son know about the Black Leagues, or did you tell him about it? Or
Yeah, I mean, he's young. He's only 6, so he knows a little bit.
Jeremy, does your group still do the luncheons? Didn't they do luncheons or something, or regular
For the
meetings?
St. Louis, that's the St. Louis Browns
That's okay.
fan club. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
On the rule changes, I think everybody may have seen that the Pacific Coast League is going to go to the robotic umpire at home plate. And they're just going to earphone the plate umpire, and they're going to call down the balls and strikes to him. So I'm wondering how much longer before it's moved over to the International League, and then whether or not that may come up in the next agreement, maybe with the umpires, I don't know. But if it's going to be working its way to the majors, I thought it was going to be in the low minors longer, but it's looked like it's jumped already to AAA.
Wow.
I think that'll change the strike zone incredibly, quite honestly, which in turn it's going to take a long time for, I think, players and pitchers and hitters to adjust to those different basic rules. I think, the automatic robo things got some built-in things that players are not going to adjust to it very quickly, I don't think.
you think you'll have different robots saying, this is my strike zone?
They should. If they go by that, they should.
And you guys talk about the money that's available for the pre-arbitration players. That seems like that's a big deal as far as awarding, like, players that overperform when they're young.
Yeah. That was my favorite part of the agreement. Other comments?
How about the How
I got
about
one.
these
You know,
is anybody surprised on these free agent signings that are going around? The big surprise to me through everything was Chris Bryant to the Colorado Rockies. The people that have gone through Colorado and have left Colorado for more money have got to be shaking their heads and looking at the contract with Chris Bryant. It's just really
Even 2 years, he'll be demanding that his no trade clause be rescinded.
Maybe.
I'm actually dead serious when I say that, because I mean, he should have stayed in San Francisco where they win, but he wanted to be the guy and get a lot of money.
Yeah, that's one of the most confusing contracts I've seen. They paid us money. They paid the Cardinals money to ship Nolan Arenado to us, which we loved. And we sent them, a decent pitcher, Austin Gomber. We had Eno Saris, who does a lot of fantasy baseball and pitching analysis. He was our guest speaker last January, and he tabbed Austin Gomber as kind of like a sleeper pick, a guy that he expected to be, good in St. Louis that you didn't know. And he had a pretty decent season out in Colorado, but of course, Colorado's a lot different than St. Louis as far as pitching, expectations. But yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you send Nolan Arenado away, Gold Glove winner, All-Star, and spend basically more money to bring in Chris Bryant? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, according to what they're saying, though, they're not bringing in Bryant to replace Arenado. They're putting Bryant in left field. According to what Bud Black is saying, and I'm thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. That makes even less sense to me.
I think the Rockies have a good prospect at third. That's why.
And David, that's a good point. You just made anybody can be the guy in Colorado. So it's wide open. I mean, Bryant could hit 50 or 60 home runs, and the Rockies could still lose 100 games, and he wouldn't care. Got my money, got my homers.
Can I just make one comment about Carlos Correa?
Yes, you certainly may.
We've been waiting.
We've been waiting, exactly. Yeah. I almost put it as an agenda item.
The only thing I'll say is it's literally the most shocking, surprising, biggest signing in the whole history of the Twins franchise. There's never, ever been a signing anywhere close to the scale or the level of surprise. It's just, that's the one thing that's really shocking Twins fans. I mean, even go back to 87, go back to 91 when they were like really competitive. There's never been anything like this.
Remind me, are you a Twins fan?
I am.
No, I'm dead serious. Do you live in the Minneapolis area?
No, but I grew up there.
Okay. And so what's the reaction of the Twins fan base back there?
I think, a lot of people are excited, but it's funny how, like if you read the chat, the comments and different articles and whatnot, people are still really upset that they have no pitching. And even though they signed Sonny Gray and a couple of relievers, the lineup has not been the problem the last number of years. It's been the pitching. So everyone's very excited to have Correa, even though he was kind of involved with the sign stealing. But people are still really worried about the pitching.
I guess.
What do they think about the opt-out, though? That he can, if he has a great season, he can opt out after 1 year.
So that's another thing. People, you can't do anything to make them happy crowd. They're complaining about that. Sure, he's just going to walk after a year and then we're right back in the same boat. My view is they have two high prospects that might actually make the team this year, Lewis and Martin, who theoretically could both play shortstop, even though they're being projected that won't be their ultimate position in the majors. And then even if he opts out after 1 year, that whole pot of money is kind of freed up again. And, that pot of money came from trading Donaldson. And so next year, maybe they get Korea for 1 year, and then the next year they go out and sign a frontline pitcher, and then more of the prospects will be ready. Like they have Kirilloff, they have Larnach, they have all these prospects who are really, really young and haven't blossomed yet, so to speak. And so Korea might be a bridge to that era, and then they'll have money to get pitching. So
Is
And also
Buxton
is a-
going to remain healthy this year?
I have no idea.
And that's
Also,
always the big question is
Mhm.
he's potentially a top 5 player in a game, but we really don't know.
And same with Buxton, who also has a kind of a brilliant contract.
Yeah.
Staying healthy
Yeah.
is the problem.
I think it does show that they're in it to win it. And I think that, against what everybody's talking about, the Reds and the Pirates and maybe the Indians fall in that category. But now it shows to the populace, now it shows to the clubhouse, now it shows to the office staff, the management, that we are dead serious about being in this thing. Instead of crashing a team and going through that long rebuilding process, we want to do something now. And I think that's important for everybody.
Yeah. My sense is Pohlad is not afraid to spend money. He just wants to know what the plan is. He doesn't want to just start signing people. But I mean, yeah, they signed Mauer to a long-term gigantic contract. They went out and got, Cruz and Donaldson before this year.
Justin Morneau, they signed him for long deal for a long time. So.
Yeah, and then he got a concussion, but
I will say over the last, 15 years or so, I feel like Minnesota and Tampa have been the 2 teams that I view as kind of small market towns, even though probably population wise, Minnesota probably isn't that. I'm not sure, but certainly TV revenue, I feel like they probably get less than the big markets. But I feel like Minnesota and Tampa always remain competitive. And as a Pirate fan, I just wish we could be like them. It's one of the, quote, smaller market teams where I feel like the owner, somebody said earlier, you really got to have an owner that actually wants to win. And they do want to win there. And it frustrates me even more. But I admire the 2 franchises because they seem to always be competitive.
yeah, the bar is definitely higher. I mean, Twins fans get frustrated because they get beat by the Yankees every year in the playoffs. But I would say since, the early 90s, there have really only been a couple of brief stretches where there was no hope, where you knew they were going to finish second to last or last in their division. There really haven't been that many chunks of time like that.
All right. Well, if anyone have any other questions, comments, surprises about, who went where?
Who will Ramirez get traded to? I joke with all my Cleveland fans that the Twins are going to get him to back up Korea.
I hope he stays there, but I mean, I'm reading the same stuff you are. It certainly, I mean, at least the Reds picked up Colin Moran.
I think
you're muted, Mike. He wants to be muted. Okay.
You don't want to hear what I'm thinking. No.
Surely do. Go ahead.
I mean, oh God, I mean, we got nothing in our trades on top of it. I mean, there's maybe one prospect out of a whole lot. And it's just devastating. I mean, they threw all their chips in last year to try and get in there and end up folding at the end of the season. And I think they just turned around and just said, okay, that was it. And I don't know, it's just, they're just really just, I'm looking forward to AAA this year. I'm looking forward to my Clippers. I'm looking at to see them.
And you know what's interesting too about teams tanking, or whatever you want to call it, was that they tried to address it in the CBA where they on one side increase the playoff teams to whatever the number is. I think it's 12, which helps you get, more teams are going to make the playoffs, obviously. And then on the other side of it, they made the draft lottery. So if you finish last, you are not guaranteed to get the first round draft pick. You have more of a chance of getting it, but you're not guaranteed to do it. And still, despite those two major issues, there are still teams, like someone mentioned, that are still being very obvious on taking the money and run and not reinvesting the money. It's interesting.
And does anybody know who the fifth highest red on the payroll is? It's Ken Griffey Jr. I'm serious. $5 billion.
I read that.
That's amazing.
Maybe he'll come back and play. He has to be better than some of these guys.
Even at 50 son. Yeah. I'd
You play with his son.
All right, guys and gals. Any other comments? It's going on 11 o'clock here. I appreciate everybody showing.
Hey, Blake,
Really
the answer,
happy.
the
What's that?
answer is to get Jim Haslam by the Pirates. Then
I wish somebody would buy the Pirates that did want to win. I mean, it is. I just want to. 79 was a long time ago.
So what is our next book?
The 75 Reds book called The Machine.
Oh yeah.
Poznansky's book. I know he probably doesn't want to talk about the Reds, but I'll try to get him anyways. With that 100th book, 100 greatest books, which at some point I'm sure we'll do that one as well. But anyways, I think it's May 21 is the date on that. But it's I mean, we've been waiting for years to do a Pete Rose book, and the book kept changing, and a new angle coming from Pete would show up. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Blake, on your Pirates, you were front and center on the MLB XM radio station yesterday morning. They somehow got on the subject about Mr. Michael Keaton. Apparently, he's from Pittsburgh area.
Yeah, he is.
The interest nationally into the Pirates, and they said it was you'd have to look it up, but they basically said, hey, we really want Michael Keaton to show up at his hometown game, and when will there be a desire from his busy schedule to make that happen? Apparently he actually was at that 2013 blackout home wild card game, because like the TV cast honed in on him apparently. So the personalities yesterday morning was just going with the fact, hey, when are we going to really have Michael Keaton show up in for a Pirates game? So I thought that I thought of you immediately, of course.
Yeah. Those were long drive homes. The 2 years that they had the home games, it was a drag. But I think the one game against the Giants, Crawford hit the grand slam in like the bottom of the second or top of the second. So it felt like the game got out of reach early. And Baumgartner was pitching. It was when he was just an ace. So that was a tough day at the office as the fan.
Batman buying the Pirates. Now that's something that it'll garner headlines. Bruce Wayne buys Pirates. Yes.
All right.
Related to your Poznansky comment, I actually wrote a set of trivia questions. In St. Louis, we always do trivia questions because we have Bob Thielman, who's very famous in the SABR trivia world. And I wrote a set of trivia questions using that list, the Baseball 100. And then we had our speaker was Jason Schwartz, who's co-director of the SABR Baseball Card Committee. He did a phenomenal presentation. And so my answers, I included baseball cards with my answers. And so we had even more discussion about baseball
sounds
cards.
cool.
Was that recorded? Was that recorded by any chance?
You know what? We actually had a discussion about that after the meeting. We have not been recording our sessions. We actually meet in person. We had like 22 people in person and 21 people in person, 23 people via Zoom. It was kind of a big draw. And I brought up the idea, maybe we need a microphone. Anyway, through the discussion, we decided we are going to record speakers like that, but we have not been recording the sessions yet. But it was a great presentation. He actually sent it to me, so I do have the PowerPoint if you want to look at it.
Yeah. Well, I can get it from here. I've seen his presentations before, and he changes it based on region. So
Right.
he does a good job. So
for sure.
All right, I think we've talked about everything in the chat. All right, everybody. Well, we'll wrap up here. Appreciate everybody coming.
Thank you.
I'm sure David's
Thanks.
hoping we'll be at the film night. If you can make it to some of these Ohio State games, there's never a big crowd there. So there's plenty of seats available.
Do they sell beer? Do they sell beer at Ohio State games now that they have?
I
that
don't think so.
Yes,
They
they
do?
do.
Okay.
Yes,
Or
they
do
do.
they?
All right.
That's an attraction.
And Blake,
That's
if
an attraction.
anybody really wants to go to an Ohio State game where they're safe because there aren't too many people there, today would work.
Yeah.
They're in Purdue today. They're at Purdue.
Oh, they're at Purdue, Steve. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Yes.
Well, they knew it was going to snow, right? Right, Larry?
Only in SABR does somebody happen to just know, yeah, they're in Purdue today.
Yeah.
Nicely done, Steve.
I'm a long-suffering fan.
All right. All right, everybody. I'm gonna
Thank
shut
you.
her down here. Appreciate everybody showing.
Very
Bye-bye,
good.
Blake.
Bye.
Take care,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.